countdown to the Chinese Grand Prix in 2026 continues, and today being Wednesday, the 11th day of March in 2026, this means that we now only have 4 days to the Formula One race in China, which is basically the second round of the Formula One season in 2026. And one of the most interesting aspects of this particular race weekend is actually that it is a sprint race weekend in China. And that should be very exciting because teams might not be able to have enough time to prepare during the free practice session on Friday, which of course throws a spanner into the works because these being new cars under new regulations, probably teams have really not understood them properly, and that should actually add a little bit of risk and probably unknowns going into the race weekend. The Chinese Grand Prix in 2026 is taking place in a weekend where there are fears that there are races that might be cancelled later in the season. And in particular, there are fears that the Bahrain Grand Prix and the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix will actually not happen later in April, which would mean that April would be a month where there will be no races. And this is because of the ongoing, situation that is happening in the Middle East, a situation that involves United States and Israel on one side and Iran on the other side. And that has created an atmosphere that might not be probably conducive for Formula One races to be hosted in Middle East during that period. But of course, it's hoped that the situation will improve and probably the situation will not de-escalate or continue escalating to enable the season to proceed as had been scheduled. And if it is cancelled, then there are rumors that those races will not be replaced, which is a little bit unfortunate for Formula Ones, but probably also good to ensure the safety and security of the people who work within the Formula One value chain. If this is the first time that you and I are meeting, I am Joe, and on this YouTube channel, I talk about Formula One and the business of Formula One, and I would really appreciate if you would consider subscribing to this YouTube channel. It is worth noting that this situation in the Middle East is also leading to an increase in crude oil prices. In fact, oil prices reached a peak of $120 per barrel earlier this week. And this is going to also affect Formula One because cost is actually an expense when it comes to the logistics of Formula One as well as other operations within Formula One. And so if the situation continues to escalate and the prices of fuel continues to go up, and the impact that is also going to have when it comes to the financial markets, that's not necessarily a good situation for investors, entrepreneurs, and business people within the Formula One ecosystem. The Chinese Grand Prix in 2026 is going to give us another chance to actually witness the fights when it comes to various teams and various drivers on track. In particular, we want to continue seeing how good Mercedes are and how good Ferrari are when it comes to competition on track, because at least during the Australian Grand Prix, those came out as the top 2 teams. And at least we can expect that they are going to exchange, leadership when it comes to championship and wins before the rest of the grid can catch up, particularly before McLaren and Red Bull can be able to close gap to the top teams. And I think this is exciting because if we can have more teams fighting for the title, more drivers fighting for the Drivers' Championship, I think that would be something that would be exciting and it would add, spice to this particular season. As a Ferrari fan and as a Lewis Hamilton fan, I would really be interested to see Ferrari on top in China. And in particular, I would hope that Lewis Hamilton can be able to win both the sprint as well as the race on Sunday. At least we saw that he can be able to win a sprinters because he is the one who won the sprinters in China in 2025. So I'm hoping he can be able to repeat that particular feat. especially given that he seems to be more comfortable with SF26 this year than he probably was with SF25 last year. One other topic or issue that at least is being discussed this week in lead up to the Chinese Grand Prix on Sunday is the issue related to the change when it comes to the rules. There has been a conversation about the need to probably tweak some of the rules to encourage better racing given the feedback that has come from teams or that is also coming from drivers. And the logic behind here is that at least there will be a number of races before those rules can be changed. And I think it makes sense that you give time for the Australian, the Chinese and the Japanese Grand Prix before a change can be made. Because I think it's important to also make those changes now based on actual data that is being collected by teams during actual racing. At least it will be easier to make decisions looking at areas that are, that data points to there being some struggles or challenges. And I think if you are an entrepreneur or a business person, you will understand this particular approach, because sometimes when you start maybe a business or you are promoting a product or a service, you may need to have data to be able to start making more informed decisions. And I think that approach makes sense. Of course, there are teams that may not be happy if changes kind of disadvantage them, and there are others who might actually be happy or are looking forward to changes to also give them a chance to get back maybe at front and maybe give them a chance of winning and securing more points. But at least this is a story that is developing, and it will be interesting to see how things all come out, or at least how things pan out over the next couple of races. This is going to be it from me today, and I hope that you have enjoyed this conversation. Subscribe to this YouTube channel if you have not, and I'm going to see you in my next video.